me now is attorney, political commentator, and author of 7 New York Times best-selling books, his most recent book being The Emmaus Code, David Limbaugh. David, it's a pleasure to have you here today. Thanks for being with me.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
First of all, why do you think there's such a lack of coverage from the mainstream media when it comes to Christian persecution around the world?
I think they're unconcerned about it. You know, you look at the polls, the self-identified atheists of the secular media, an overwhelming percentage, I mean, unbelievably high percentage are atheists, and they're certainly not Christians, no matter what faith they are. And they have a selective outrage. They're outraged about persecution against other faiths in Islam, but not Christianity and Jewish religions. So I think it's because, if you want to know the truth, I think it's because the true God is the God of the Bible, and the secular media is kind of has an aversion to truth, and so Obama talks about the Islamophobia, but the truth is probably 10% of the 2 billion Christians worldwide are subject to some form of persecution, and you don't see us persecuting other faiths. And yet, Obama demonizes us as the bitter clingers and the intolerant people. It's really amazing how backward he is and how upside down and inverted his morality is.
Right. Now, President Obama has said that he's a Christian. He said that he is a practitioner of the Christian faith, but even he won't talk about this. You know, he makes a point to talk about the Muslim sensitivity, about gun control, climate change, and our moral responsibility to address each of those things. But we still don't hear anything from him about the slaughter of innocent Christians around the world by radical Muslims, not just targeted independently, but by radical Muslims. Why is he silent on this?
Well, I think he has a sympathy, a nostalgic sympathy for Islam because of his childhood. And I do not believe he's a Christian. I'm sorry if it's politically incorrect to deny his profession of faith. I think it's expedient. Everything about him screams otherwise. Now, I'm not saying he's a Muslim plant, but I think he's sympathetic to Islam, and I don't think he has fealty to Christian principles or to the God of the Bible. He doesn't even know anything about it. When he talks about it, it's embarrassing. And he said the sweetest sound he ever heard in his life was the Muslim call to prayer. No Christian could make that statement. No Christian. And so I've written about this before, and again, not in a conspiracy theory sense, but I'm not convinced. In fact, I'm convinced he's not a Christian.
Right. Now, we're almost out of time, but you recently wrote a new book. It's actually on my bookshelf. Next one I'm going to read, called The Emmaus Code, Finding Jesus in the Old Testament. Can you tell us a little bit about that book?
Yeah, it's a book about Jesus being all through the Old Testament. Jesus found 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They were despondent because their promised Messiah had died without delivering Israel from its political oppressor, Rome. And they were made not to recognize Jesus. He asked them what's wrong, and they say, "Are you the only one in the world who hasn't heard about the events?" And they say, "No." I mean, and he says, don't you understand that the Christ had to be made to suffer? And then he proceeded to take them through the entire Old Testament scriptures and showed how each and every one of them pointed to himself. So the Old Testament, this isn't my idea. This is directly from the mouth of Jesus Christ in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 24. All of the Old Testament, every page points to Jesus Christ. My book points out exactly how that is the case. All the different Christ threads, the foreshadowings, the prefigurings, the prophecies, the typology, the Christophanies, which are appearances. We don't have much time to go into it all, but it is the book that I wish I'd had when I became a Christian some 25 years ago, because it is kind of a late introduction to the Old Testament. It's a outline and summary of each book, and then it shows how each of those books point to Jesus Christ. It's also it's got a summary and outline of Old Testament history, because I think people are intimidated by that. And it shows all the Christ threads leading from the Old Testament to the New, and how the Bible is so amazingly and divinely integrated.
Well,